first Asian American elected to Congress. That would be groundbreaking. Even though Congress is very dysfunctional and very broken, the rhetoric is crazy, and the political environment is toxic. To listen to people, to understand people, and then to solve problems.
For those in the audience who might not be entirely familiar with Senator Lam's background, let me provide a brief overview. Senator Lam secured a seat in Maryland House of Delegates in 2014 and later clinched a Senate seat for years thereafter. Senator Lam has dedicated his efforts to key areas such as healthcare reform, education, the environment, and fostering accountability in state government. Throughout his tenure in the Maryland State Congress, while fulfilling his responsibilities as a physician at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. On the last day of November, Senator Lam made an announcement expressing his intention to enter the Democratic primary, seeking to fill the vacancy of a federal representative for the Maryland 3rd Congressional District.
Sure, happy to do that. Thank you for the wonderful interview. So my parents are from Hong Kong and from Taiwan, and they moved here into the United States around the 1970s and met each other in Pennsylvania, where they raised myself and my two younger brothers. They were really inspirational in many ways to help us get a good start to our lives, but also what they did was inspire me to continue in public service, in recognizing that they had a lot of opportunities here in the United States that they wouldn't have had they been somewhere else. And so it was really important to me to be able to give back to our community, and that's why I decided to run for office back in 2014. Because I recognized that, number one, there are very few physicians that serve in the Maryland General Assembly. There are also very few Asian Americans that serve there as well. And as a physician, you have unique perspectives. You really are a problem solver. Our job is to listen to people, to understand people, and then to solve problems. And that's what you really need in the General Assembly, and that's also what you need in Congress, to be able to bring that perspective, to make sure that you're there for the right reasons, to be able to help people and serve people. I think it's important to recognize that even though Congress is very dysfunctional and very broken, we need to have good representation down there for us. And it would be all too easy to throw your hands up in the air and say, well, this is not where anyone realistically would want to be. But we do need to have good representation of folks that bring a perspective of solving problems, of someone who understands the need to listen to people and understands the struggles that we go through, particularly with patients that I continue to see every week in the clinic, and be able to take that perspective of being a pragmatic problem solver, someone who listens to Congress, to be able to get things done. I think that's really important because Congress is very broken. But it starts with good people with the best intentions going down there to help fix it, that we can finally turn a corner in being able to have a functioning federal government, being able to reform and really have Congress do its job. And that's why I'm proud to be able to run for Congress. I think there are 5 other top-line candidates running in this election, and so it is a very crowded race. But I've run in very crowded primaries before, both in 2014 when I was first elected to the Maryland House of Delegates, and also in 2018 when I was first elected to the State Senate, and won both those elections. So we know how to run very competitive primary elections, and we have felt the tremendous level of support from the community, including at events like we have had today, where there's tremendous amount of enthusiasm and support to see the very first Asian American elected to Congress representing Maryland. That would be groundbreaking. There are very few Asian American members. There are also very few physicians serving in Congress. Currently, there are only 15. And with all the healthcare issues, the aging population that we have, it's all really important for us to have folks that have diverse perspectives and to make an argument why, being a physician, being an Asian American, growing up here as a second generation, is a really important perspective to have on Capitol Hill. And that's the perspective that I hope to be able to bring not only to represent them well, but also to solve problems, to be a good listener, to understand people's concerns, and ultimately to be able to come to pragmatic, common sense solutions that our community really deserves. Obviously, as a physician, healthcare is really, really important to me. I think there's still progress that we can look at when it comes to making prescription drugs more affordable, when it comes to addressing the mental health and behavioral health crises that we see here in the country, particularly after the pandemic, as many folks have struggled with additional anxieties and other kind of factors that have made life more difficult. And also with substance use disorders, I think we continue to see many people facing the challenge of addiction. And we need to be able to do more to support those individuals. We also have an aging population that does need additional support when it comes to home health aides, when it comes to access to healthcare, and also through facilities like nursing care and assisted care facilities. And we can do and make a lot of progress from that in Congress. There are also other issues when it comes to education that we need to look at, making sure that we continue to have higher ed be affordable to students that are in universities and colleges, making sure that we support additional research dollars when it comes to NIH funding. And then also, when we look at our environment, we want to make sure that we continue to address the climate crisis that we're seeing today, because our children demand it. When I look at my 2-year-old and reflect on the world that she's going to grow up in, it's important for us to have a clean, healthy environment for her, and that means getting to work now on that. When it comes to AAPI issues, I think it's really important for us to also address civil rights needs, to make sure that we focus on addressing the additional discrimination and hate that we've seen as a result of the heightened political rhetoric over the last few years. We also need to look at things like the laws that we're seeing, for example, being promoted in Florida to exclude a specific ethnicity, Chinese in this case, from being able to own land and also own businesses. That is wrong, and that's an area where Congress does need to step up, because there are other states that are looking at this as well, to be able to clear and eliminate these types of policies that are really discriminatory. So the Chinese American community is really, really important. There are only 3 Chinese Americans that are members of Congress, Judy Chu and Ted Lieu from California and Grace Meng from New York, and that's it, out of 435 representatives in Congress. So we need to have good representation there from individuals that understand our community, that share our values, share our background and heritage and culture as well. I've never been one that has been shy to speak up for what I believe is right. And that's the type of representation that our Asian American or Chinese American community needs in Congress, because times are really tough these days. The rhetoric is crazy, and the political environment is toxic. But we need good, well-intentioned people that are problem solvers, that look at common sense solutions to be able to speak up for our community and find common ground so that we can address all of the challenges that we're seeing. I think bringing that perspective as a problem solver is really important. We're not all going to agree on every single issue, and we have to approach each issue individually to understand where people's perspectives and where the stakeholders are. It's a really complicated issue when it comes to local Board of Ed decisions, when it comes to things like redistricting, and also other policies that they may be looking at. But I think ultimately we need to be aware of kind of the broader civil rights argument, that we can't discriminate against people regardless across the board. We can't see discrimination in our local schools. We don't want to see discrimination when it comes to laws like what was proposed in Florida that would exclude Chinese Americans from being able to own land or businesses. You know, civil rights is important across the board, regardless of people's perspectives and their own experiences. But I think we can find common ground on these issues if we think about them very carefully, and we do have a lot of work to do. We need to help support our local businesses here in the state of Maryland. We've taken many steps to start that progress, but I think we still have a ways to go. Small businesses are the backbone of our Maryland economy. They comprise over 90% of the businesses that we see here. And so we need to be able to be there to help support them, whether that's through certain provisions or support, or by cutting back on red tape. So for example, a couple of years ago, I introduced legislation that passed that reduced the red tape when it came to minority-owned businesses. It was actually just earlier this year. But it was a bill that had come to us from the business community as something that would really help them be able to secure certification as a minority-owned business. And we said, well, you know, it's duplicative to have to seek certification as a minority-owned business in both the state and the local level for contracts that they may be seeking, whether it's state contracts or local contracts. So we passed legislation to say, regardless of where you get your certification from, that can apply for either state or local contracts. But it's things like that where we can look at policies that will help reduce kind of that bureaucratic red tape, kind of rein in some of the regulations that seem unreasonable to make it easier for businesses to be able to function here in Maryland. I think we've made a lot of progress. If you look at us just within the past year, we've climbed the ranks a lot of times, and a lot of the business measures that are out there gauging how open Maryland is for business, and we've done very well.
人关心政治，就如同鱼关心水质。每个人就像河里的一条鱼，河的水质关系到每条鱼的生活质量，甚至生命安全。所以，关心水质是每条鱼都应该做的事情。所以，政治虽然是少数人的职业，却应该成为每个人的副业。请加入我们，请支持原基金会，请给我们捐款。
华一代用好公民权，华二代人生更精彩。
Go Yuan Foundation!